thinking from a UK government perspective, I'm really struck by this point around the diversity of labs that we see from across the globe. And even within the UK government, we see, from where I sit, we see really quite a wide variety of different players and organisations in this field. At one level, we're lucky enough to have Nesta itself. I look after this government innovation group, so a mixture of policy innovation, policy reform and data, and some of the international links through to things like the Open Government Partnership. But also I think it's the specific teams. So in the UK over the last year or so, we've developed Policy Lab, a small design-led entity within our government, thinking about how to bring tools such as ethnography, prototyping into policy decisions and into the face-to-face services of government. Well, we also have things like the Behavioural Insights team that a little while back now spun out of our group and now is co-owned by the staff of the Behavioural Insights team, by Nesta and by the Cabinet Office in the UK. So even within the UK, within our relatively small scope, we see this range of different mixes of types of organisation and types of purpose. And my sort of quick message really from what I see from where I sit is that we need to, when we're looking at the innovation labs across the world, to think very much about their context and not just about them as specific institutions. Because I think it's that ecosystem of innovation between those players well outside of government's orbit, the provokers and the conveners outside government, such as Nesta, those specific labs, sometimes in government, but always at the boundaries of government, like in our case, Policy Lab, but also the people that provide the context to translate some of that activity back into the bureaucracies. So things like my government innovation group within the Cabinet Office is a good example. And I think the last and most important and often underrated part of the innovation ecosystem are those individuals within the government bureaucracies who are, if you like, the network of innovators, those who perhaps commission, support, connect with the labs across different teams and provide that fundamentally important zone to encourage and give life to the labs and their work. And I think we too often underestimate the importance of that aspect of the innovation cycle. Well, we've got, for this session this morning, we're going to kick off. I'm really excited about this event, been looking forward to it, and I think we're going to have a really exciting few days. I'm going to welcome up to the stage our first three labs. We've got Carolyn Curtis, who's the Chief Executive from the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. We've got Jorge Díaz from the National Digital Strategy from the Government of Mexico. And finally, Nicolas Conso, who's head of the Innovation Service, SGMAP from the French government. And we're going to roll through 5 minutes each on these, on the labs, and then hopefully have a little bit of time for some questions. So, Carolyn, do you want to take over?
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. So in Australia, the numbers of children who are reported for child abuse and neglect have increased by over 50% in the last 10 years. If you're an Indigenous Australian, you are 7 times more likely to be involved with child protection services at some stage in your life. 75% of the children currently involved in the child protection system are children that have cycled through the system their whole life. And over the last 10 years, we've had 37 reviews and inquiries that have all called for radical change in child protection. In this photo, you'll see a photo of a young girl, and her name is Mystique. And Mystique was removed when she was quite young and put into care. And this is what Mystique told us about a year ago now. What I'm doing is not living. I'm better off than others, but this is not life. This is not what I want. I want to increase the chances of a proper survival, a proper life, a happy, healthy life, not one on drugs, not one in and out of jail, and in and out of poor mental health. And this pretty much reflects the aspiration of young people that are involved in our child protection system in Australia at the moment, which I think is pretty devastating. 5 years ago, Taxi developed a program, a service model that's now scaling across the country called Family by Family. And the vision for Family by Family was that all families could thrive, not just survive. But we know one singular service model on its own is only a drop in the ocean of the sort of change that needs to be made for people like Mystique. But I think perhaps one of the most powerful things about Family by Family is how it's proved to be a catalyst for greater systems change. There was one particular state in Australia, New South Wales, that were really taken by the model. And they weren't taken by, I guess, the set of interactions or the program in itself. They were most taken by how it was created. And they asked themselves, well, if Taxi have achieved this in creating Family by Family, how else could we use this same approach that they've used to other parts of our system? So it's been 3 years, our relationship with Family and Community Services in New South Wales, and it's been a real pathway. It's taken a lot of time to build the trust and to really gain the insight into how we could start to pull different levers and create different sorts of change. I think at times with certain pieces of work we were doing, we were asking ourselves, are we actually just reinforcing the current system, or are we actually pushing ourselves towards something different? So here are some of the questions that we've been exploring with Family and Community Services. And I think that the one down the bottom, which is how might we support families through their journey of reunification? And in Australia, reunification is when you remove a child, but there's an opportunity to put them home again with their family, which is ultimately what's best. The system to support that is completely broken. So hence we never really give children back when we take them. They tend to just stay in the system and I guess endure a different kind of abuse by the system. So now Taxi have an opportunity to work alongside state government in New South Wales to really understand what the current system is, the problems in the current system, and start to imagine what a new system looks like around returning children to their parents if at one stage they had been abused and neglected. The methods that we use are really about bringing together the best of business, the best of design, the best of social science. So you're really wanting to understand how you can create behaviour change using the intentionality of design, but drawing on the sustainability that business brings to the picture. Our approach really moves from understanding your problem and the opportunity through to designing solutions, proving that they work, and then scaling or implementing them more broadly. It's still early days for us, and that's 3 years in. I would still say it's still early days, but when you've got a system as complex as child protection that is absolutely on its knees to media and in the paper every single day, and one of the most visible criticised systems in our country, time is something that you have to be prepared to put in. And so when reflecting on what I could share with you today, I think there's been 4 significant learnings for us on this pathway to systems change in child protection. First of all, it's really about engaging and building capacity at every level. And unless we have that, we don't go there. That's a prerequisite for us. So from chief executives right through to frontline practitioners, what is the buy-in and what's the opportunity to build capability across the board? For us, it's really important to have some content. So at the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, we're not all child protection people. We don't all understand child protection, but some of us certainly do. And we think that having that knowledge is really important so we can help push them and help them imagine what's possible rather than just deliver the briefs that they dish over to us, which is often what happens. So we're now in a position where often, especially over the first 6 weeks, a brief can change like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times as we start to really push them to imagine bigger and different and more disruption. Staying focused on what you're trying to achieve, it can be incredibly disheartening working in such a complex system, and you question what you're doing many times. But staying focused on the goal, staying focused on the children and the families and the purpose of what you're trying to do is critical. And I think lastly is around time and trust and track record. And that we've really had to put the hard yards in, and it's really informed our strategy as an organisation about going narrow and deep rather than wide and narrow, because developing that trust and that track record in Australia where issues are so complex, they're so visible, where the stakes are really high when you're talking about children's lives, you have to really be prepared to put in that time. Hopefully we will get there in the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. It's a great example to kick us off. So next, Jorge, can you join us at the lectern and tell us about the work you've been doing with the government of Mexico?
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Okay, so imagine you're a pregnant woman in Mexico. Your income is below the poverty line, which is around $2 or £1 and 3p, 1 quid. And your income, or at least 60% of your income, comes from welfare programs and benefits. You might have to travel as a pregnant woman up to 10 miles or 16 kilometers to get treatment, and you have to go there every month for your routine checkup. So if you were this woman, it would be true, and it is true for at least 1 out of 5 pregnant women in Mexico. According to the MDGs, maternal mortality is one of the things that we should have reduced to 0 by this time. And even with the great progress that Mexico has made, we're still far from fulfilling the goal. The most alarming part, and that we noticed, is that the rate of improvement has declined, meaning that although we did have a steep decline on maternal mortality, now we're moving really slowly. And we will be unable to meet the goal by September. So the present issue, and after thinking about it, we realized that the thing was information. We're receiving all these consultation, and we were thinking that probably the problem was somewhere else. But in the end, we were just doing tons of things with super aggregated data at the national level and at the state level. We didn't realize that we couldn't understand the problem itself, and it was really centered at the national level. So we moved and tried to find a different way of doing it. It turns out that the Ministry of Health in Mexico has great data. They've been capturing critical hospital information at the infrastructure unit, at the very local level, the number of consultations, the procedures. So we had all this information about women that we weren't taking or tapping into. These granular data helped us paint a much better image of what we could be doing with information, and probably helping reduce the risk that mothers-to-be were facing. So after assessing the information, we talked to the Data Science for Social Good Institute or Center at the University of Chicago, and they helped us develop a study that led to 3 main findings. The first one is that prenatal care is the cornerstone to maternal mortality reduction. I mean, this is easy math. It's not rocket science. We know that prenatal healthcare is sort of really important. But using data to prove it gave us a clue to which population and which sort of socio-demographic strata we had to be looking at. The second finding was that accessibility is inversely related to risk. So the farther you live from a health clinic, the more at risk you are. And this is especially true to those clinics that do not provide emergency services, aka C-sections. So many mothers might be at risk, and the nearest clinic wouldn't be able to provide C-sections. And the third was that in Mexico, we have this very, very complicated system of health insurance and coverage that has 4 different parts. So health coverage type and matching it to the mother created further problems, because the treatment was different if you were not matched with the appropriate institution. So what happened next? We decided to go into Prospera, which is the largest social program in Mexico and the second largest conditional cash transfer program in the world. Prospera works with it gives out $1 billion around every year. And we realized that this woman had mobile technology penetration. So we figured out that maybe through automated SMS communication, we could help tap into the problem and go into information itself. So provide them with healthcare and with all the advice that led up to childbirth. In this sense, open data has played a crucial role in the whole process. Our office leads it leads the open data policy in the country. And now we're at the point in which we believe that the tests and what we found in the last year can be shown in a pilot, and it will be shown in a pilot that we've been working with the Ministry of Health, MIT Media Lab, Behavioral Insights team, with the support of the FCO Prosperity Fund, and Telefonica, to channel high-value content to beneficiaries via SMS. So the idea behind Prospera was very simple: condition money to mothers to send their kids to school and to get better preventive health. At this point, and after this program being revolutionary throughout the 90s and being replicated throughout like 50 countries around the world, we thought that we could probably help reach that goal that we weren't making with the traditional media that we were using. So in the upcoming months, we're going to launch Prospera Digital. This randomized control trial will be directed to up to 10,000 women in 600 towns in Mexico, 5 of the poorest states, in order to bring timely, personalized, and targeted information that will hopefully help make mothers to be better decisions about health. I can talk about the sort of like the treatment groups and the design that the Behavioral Insights team has helped us create later in the coffee area. I think that this project has two benefits. We'll learn a lot. It'll create a precedent for using technology in developing countries and using data, open data in developing countries. But on the other hand, it'll help us as government relate much better to beneficiaries and sort of cut that asymmetry of information that we have. So we know a lot about them, but we're not using that knowledge to give them back what they need. So yeah, if you have any questions, please do get in touch with me.
Thank you, Jorge. And over to Nicolas, another government that the UK, a team in another government that the UK's had really strong links with over the last few years.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be there to share what we are doing in France. You know, in France, public sector represents more than 57% of GDP, so it's quite huge, and because we believe it's more an asset than a burden, we strongly need to invest in public innovation, sector innovation, and we believe that lab approaches are a very promising way to make our public sector effective and competitive. Working in Prime Minister body, one of our goals is to promote and to develop and scale up public sector innovation. So to do that, we first try to do projects with labs. We are convinced that the new public services will be more open, more collaborative, and we are sure that the laboratory mode is a part of the future of modernization projects. In our labs, we use all the kind of techniques you talked about, working as a method of startups to develop online services, using design thinking and ethnography and prototyping, and also nudge. And we strongly believe that mixing these kind of abilities are a key for the future of these projects. Another important part is to fund, because we are convinced that to innovate you need to invest. So we created a specific fund for innovation and radical digital transformation projects from 150 million euros for 3 years. It has been a huge decision to save some money, to have some money and to invest in these kind of projects. And we act as a hub to promote a culture of innovation, and we encourage the lab approaches in the ministry, and we work with other labs of the local authorities. So let's focus on 2 examples. For this project, we get together teams working as a startup to develop a new digital product with the product owner from minister, developers, UX designer, and so on. And in 3 months, the goal was to have a beta version online used by real users, administration and agency, to improve the product and make sure it's correct and reliable. So we developed this service to calculate and to claim for 13 different social benefits with just on online services. And when formerly you had to know the type of benefits you could have, and you have to go to 13 different agencies. So going from your situation, you can know what benefits you can have, and every month we had new benefits. And it has done in 3 months using the startup methods. Other example, using designer, you set up a team of designers, project manager, consultant, and immersion to address the specific issue of modernization. And we have a prototyping solution. We have implemented this approach to deeply reinvent the front desk of National Retirement Pension Fund offices. We redesigned these offices and developed new products that are now widely spread in all the offices in the retirement pension body. On each of these projects, we organize the correct mix of these methodologies to maximize impact and chance of success. As we promote this approach, I said we try to also invest on the scaling up by using the fund I said before of 150 million. And our constant preoccupation is to make sure that successful project labs we are leading or helping will scale up. And I think this is the main issue. When this issue is the main challenge for labs, if we do not want that labs be small islands where very innovative projects will be lost in the ocean of government and agency mainstream projects, and if we want that these projects have massive impact on citizens and businesses. That is why I believe it's a good thing that labs be close to decision centers or in connection with decision centers. And I feel really lucky that in France we belong to the Prime Minister office for that. Same thing for you. You said you act as a translator. I think this is the same thing. We really need to translate what you do to the mainstream of administrations. And thanks to this position, we have been able to use this lab methodology to prepare and to prototype some aspects of bill of law of elderly people, for instance, and loss of independence of really mainstream projects. To conclude, I think we need to open a new era for labs. I would call the scale-up era, in which our labs method will be no more be seen as really awesome but marginal, but become one of the main tools used by many to transform in depth our public services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Now, I think we've had a good start and plenty to chew over already. I've certainly got a few ideas that I can take back to my own teams already. Got a couple of minutes for questions now, and I think there's quite a rich seam there. If people want to indicate if they've got a question for the panel. I mean, I think the two main areas stand out for me. One's about this mixture of new skill sets, if you like, design, digital, new data, and our ability to translate that back into a culture of government. And something else about are we the awesome but marginal players, and how do we move from there into a mainstream of public service activity, and not just necessarily at a national government level. So I'm still looking for if anyone's got a question. If not, then sorry, there's a hand waving right in front of me. Sorry about that.
Yes, I'm Nick Lansley, and I'm from Brighton. No, I'm from ex-Tesco Labs, Tesco, one of the big grocers in the UK. One of the big themes that seem to come out is that you seem to be discovering some of this when big data became available to you. Some of these correlations between finding things were an issue and looking at patterns of solving them seem to come across from what I understand from what some of you are saying, from having that data. So is the important first step with a lot of these projects making sure that you've got lots of good data that you can actually explore? Is that a good starting point?
Jorge, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah. So the whole project was actually, we never thought that we were going to do these randomized control trial or like give out 10,000 mobile phones and like provide 10 million SMS texting like 5-6 months ago, until we had the results of that previous study with the University of Chicago. So in a way, data and uncovering data that wasn't that wasn't open until then, sort of created the project. And I think it's a very sort of common way in which we as an office do works. We have a question, we find the data, we then open it because it's on our sort of, it's one of our functions to do open data. We sort of like anonymize it and put it out there, and then we start working with it. We're not just publishing. We're also playing with it, and from then on, we started this project.
And Carolyn, data comes big and small, right? So in many ways, it's the interesting patterns through the aggregations of data, but also from the sort of personal experience of individuals that you're seeking to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to look at all forms of data in terms of child protection, and it's historically not something that we do well. And I think that we're often collecting the wrong data as well. That's not really giving us the sort of insights that we need. So I think there's another whole big piece of reimagining that needs to happen there in terms of child protection as well.
Okay, great. Now, I think this is just at the point where everyone's got 1,000 questions as well. So we've kicked this off. Just in this point where you're still hungry, we're going to stop the session and move on to the next one. So can you give a round of applause for a really great panel and good start to our few days?